And welcome everyone to Beyond the Forecast. And we are starting another week with you. Thank you for joining us here. And it's a free week, which means we're going to be talking a little about everything. No themed week for you this week or next week even. So we are going to leave some options open to you as we head towards our live streaming podcast tomorrow and also next week. But we're also going to have the majority of this week left open to a lot of science and weather that doesn't pertain to a certain season or pertain to things that are happening right now. So there you go. We're going to be looking at today a few different things for you. Meteorologist John Gross is going to take us into the explanation of downbursts, what they are and how they impact you in certain thunderstorms. Because to be honest with you, downbursts can be just as damaging as straight line winds sometimes. So meteorologist John Gross will take you into the explanation and science behind downbursts, and then meteorologist John Gross will be back to explain the northern lights to us, how they form, when we are most likely to see them. He'll have all that information on how you can catch the northern lights and how they're formed coming up in that explanation. And then we'll also take a look at our podcast from last week where we were talking about Earth Day and climate and carbon footprint. Me and meteorologist Haley Fischetti sat down and discussed that with you all on our live streaming podcast. So we'll have a segment of that coming up at the end of the show. But before we get into those fun things today, we're going to talk about some fun facts, trivia, and photos. First up, weather history. So this day in weather history, on April 28th, 1921, a severe hailstorm impacted Anson County, North Carolina, producing baseball-sized hail at such a rate that it took out gardens, grain fields, and trees, acreage of trees. And also pine trees were impacted, had to be cut for lumber because the damage was so extensive. Baseball-sized hail falling so fast and so rapidly that it basically took out everything in its path. So this was, again, April 28th, 1921 in Anson County, North Carolina. Pretty wild. Now, trivia. Friday, we wanted to know, what is the most deadly type of weather in America? Is it flooding, heat, tornado, or winds? Now, some might say flooding. Believe it or not, it's actually excessive heat. It is heat that drives most of the deaths created by weather in North America. Flooding is very close to, though. And again, heat is the answer for Friday's trivia question. Now, today, we want to know, what is predicting weather called? Is it guessing, watching, forecasting, or observing? Hit the QR code. This one should be pretty easy for you all. Put the QR code, take you to the answer, put your answer in, and we'll give you the answer tomorrow here on Beyond the Forecast. Now, viewer photo of the day. This was a beautiful photo sent in from David Perzik, and it's always brought to you by Great Rooms. Thank you, Great Rooms, for sponsoring this. But David sent us this picture of a robin, titled Early Spring Bird Activity in Sheboygan. I always love robins. Everyone always lets us know. This is what I love about robins. Everyone always lets you know when the first robins are spotted, because that is always a long sign of spring's on the way. But yeah, the robins have been out in full force here across northern Michigan. So thank you, David, for sending that in. And if you do have any pictures, you can always send them in, whether it's to the 9 and 10 News website, the Beyond the Forecast Facebook page, or to weather@9and10news.com, and we will get those up and shown to everybody. So thank you again, David, for sending in that wonderful picture of that robin, and thank you to Great Rooms for sponsoring viewer photo of the day. All right, let's get into the show, shall we? First, we're going to send it over to meteorologist John Gross, who's going to give you the science and explanation of downbursts, what they are and how they impact you in thunderstorms. We'll have all that coming up right after the break.
Hey there, everybody. Meteorologist John Gross, and today we are going to be talking a little bit more exactly about what is a downdraft and how can they be dangerous if you're flying or if you're just out caught in a downdraft. Not going to be the best place to be. But in order to talk about a downdraft, we have to go back to the stages of how a thunderstorm develops. So there are three main ones. This is where we'll start. First off, you need your cumulus stage, so you've got that warmer air starting to rise. You're starting to build your cloud deck, and then eventually that's how you're going to start to essentially grow your thunderstorm. Once you continue to grow your thunderstorm and you get it to its most mature, or at least well-developed parts, in its lifetime, you're talking about the mature stage. So you've got a very strong updraft. You're talking about a very strong hail core potentially. You could be talking about a lot of heavy rainfall potentially. But once you start to weaken that thunderstorm, the hail core, the colder air, or the cold pool is what we call it, starts to take over. Eventually, that thunderstorm will start to precipitate itself out. And once we get to that point, then we're in the dissipating stage. And that is where we're talking a little bit more about what exactly the downdraft means. So here we are again at the mature stage. You're talking about your very mature thunderstorm. You've got a very strong updraft. Again, that warmer air continues to build into your thunderstorm. You've got a lot of moisture now working into the colder levels of the atmosphere, so you're building a strong hail core. You also could be talking about a lot of heavy rainfall within your thunderstorm, so let's look at it, your hail and the heavy rain. But then eventually, that updraft, it can't support the thunderstorm anymore. You don't have enough warm air left to build the thunderstorm, or at least keep it at that mature stage. The colder air starts to win out, and then it starts to build into the middle of the storm. And once we start to do that, that's when we're going to start to see the thunderstorm precipitate out. Now, that can be in the form of hailstones, that can be in the form of heavy rainfall, or that can just be in the form of very strong winds. So once you start to get that, that's eventually what you're talking about. A lot of heavy rainfall, a lot of strong wind. And once it reaches the ground, it pretty much dissipates 360 degrees from where it's originally orienting from. So that's a place you do not want to be when you're talking about the downdraft, including on an airplane. So if you're talking about a downburst versus being on an airplane, that downburst plus your strong tailwind, that can cause abrupt changes in altitude. And that is another term that we like to call turbulence. If you've ever been on a plane and you feel it shaking a little bit sometimes and it might make you a little uneasy, you're most likely dealing with a downdraft. Now, usually when you're talking about forecasting, you have people at airports, you've got meteorologists on standby to try and avoid these types of scenarios, especially for aircraft, so they can try to avoid it, but it's not 100% perfect. So not a good place to be when you're flying. Here we go with talking a little bit more about the downdraft. Now, one thing I mentioned is not only do you talk about strong winds being spread out at the surface from wherever that downdraft originates, but you also can bring down a lot of moisture in a very short period of time. So you can have what's called a microburst, or you can have what's called a macroburst. Now, essentially, they're almost the same thing. The main difference is just how big is the diameter of where your microburst or your macroburst dispersing all of that moisture. So when you're talking about the microburst, if your downburst is 2.5 miles wide or less, you're talking about the microburst. So it can be a very concentrated area of very strong winds dispersing, of a lot of heavy rainfall dispersing, even hailstones potentially, depending on how strong the updraft was. But once you start to talk about the macroburst, that's when you can start to see the rain and the wind dispersing out over a wider area. So now you're talking about the downburst being greater than 2.5 miles wide. Macroburst, over 2.5 miles, 2.5 miles or less, microburst. Case in point, just a place you don't want to be outside in or on an aircraft when you're talking about downdrafts. I'm meteorologist John Gross reporting for Beyond the Forecast.
Thanks, John. Now, coming up next, meteorologist John Gross is back with us to talk about the northern lights. We'll have more details on those and when you can catch them coming up right after the break.
Hey there, everybody. Meteorologist John Gross. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that gets a lot of people's attention. And if you're lucky enough, you've seen it at least once in your lifetime. We're talking about the northern lights, otherwise known as the aurora borealis. But we have to go outside of this world to understand why exactly we see the northern lights and or the aurora borealis occur on planet Earth, and it all has to do with the sun. So here's a look at the sun. You're talking about what we call a solar wind. So this is carrying heat, this is carrying charged particles throughout space, and then they eventually come into contact with us here on planet Earth, but surrounding planet Earth, we have what's called a magnetic field. Now, you can think of this magnetic field also known as a magnetic shield. This helps to protect us from a lot of those charged particles that are emitted from the sun. This is also a big reason why we tell you to wear sunscreen when we're talking about a very hot, high UV day. Now, when you're talking about that magnetic field, this is a big reason why we don't see a lot of those charged particles reaching us here in our atmosphere. However, when you're talking about what's called a solar storm, on occasion, the sun can emit more charged particles than what we would normally see on a daily basis. So, solar wind versus solar storm. We need the solar storm to have that better chance for a lot of those charged particles to reach us here into Earth's atmosphere. And where those charged particles are going to enter Earth's atmosphere is going to be right near the poles. So you're talking about the North Pole, and you're also talking about the South Pole. So especially for us here in the Northern Hemisphere, in Michigan, in the United States, that is one of the big reasons why when we have the chance to see the northern lights, we tell you, look farther north. The farther north you go, closer to the poles, that's going to be the better chance because that's where more of those charged particles are entering Earth's atmosphere and interacting more with what we call oxygen and nitrogen. Those are going to be the two main elements we talk about as we're going into Earth's atmosphere to see those pretty colors start to develop, and that's what we can see visually with our eyes. So this is the collision part. So you're towards the poles. Those charged particles from the sun, they're starting to collide with Earth's atmosphere. And again, once they come into contact with the nitrogen and the oxygen, two of Earth's most abundant elements that we have in the atmosphere, that's when we start to see those pretty colors that we all, hopefully, at least once in our lifetime, get to see. So here's a look at it. You're talking about the oxygen first. And when you start to see those charged particles come into contact with the oxygen, that's when you're talking about those pretty reds, some of those yellows, even those very vibrant greens. When you're talking about the nitrogen, that's when you're talking about those beautiful blues, even some of those pinks and even those purples. But again, those are the two main elements we talk about when we're talking about those charged particles coming into contact with Earth's atmosphere. Now, depending on where you're located on planet Earth, the aurora shape can look a little bit different. Also, depending on how much charged particles we're talking about interacting with Earth's atmosphere, that also can have a dependency on how the aurora is shaped. So one of those main things we were talking about, again, you're looking north. You want to look, especially here in the northern hemisphere, the farther north, because that's where those charged particles are interacting with Earth's magnetic field a little bit more towards the poles. And then another good tip, when you're talking about the northern lights, when you're talking about the aurora borealis, you want to get away from as much light pollution as you can. You want to be in one of the darkest places that you can. That's going to give you the best chance, if we do have the northern lights out, to see them visually with your own eyes. I'm meteorologist John Gross reporting for Beyond the Forecast.
Thanks again, John. Appreciate that. Now, coming up next, we take a look back at our live podcast from last week where meteorologist Haley Fischetti and I talked about climate, carbon footprint, and everything to do surrounding Earth Day. We'll have that coming up after the break. And welcome back, everyone, to Beyond the Forecast. Now, this is where we plug our live streaming podcast. Every week, Tuesdays, 10 a.m., we have a live streaming podcast that you can take part in, as we'll be live on the Beyond the Forecast Facebook page, the 910 News YouTube channel, my professional Facebook page, the 910 News Facebook page, and you can be in chat and talk with us, ask us questions, discuss the topic of the week. Last week, we were talking about Earth Day, carbon footprint, climate, and we had the podcast discussion on that. And here's a segment from it. Check it out.
Yeah, I talk about this week, or maybe I already talked about the CPC outlook.
Yeah, that was yesterday's episode.
Talking about that, and yeah, kind of breaking down what we can see and how we use that data to kind of forecast.
Climate prediction.
And the climate prediction outlook from even 2 weeks ago, talking about this week, right on track. Looks nice, above average to what we normally see, average time of year for Northern Michigan, especially Traverse City area, in the low 50s. Now we're seeing mid 50s and even seeing some low 70s maybe tomorrow, Thursday. So a little bit of a warm up.
All All right, that would be a great birthday present if it's warm on the 5th.
We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do. So yeah, if you guys have any questions about climate or carbon footprint or Earth Day in general, things that you can do, there's a lot of experiments that I've been seeing online that we just don't have the time or manpower to do. But there's a lot of things you can do with the kids, like make rain gauges out of 2-liter bottles.
I think I'm
bird
gonna.
feeders. Like I said, there's a lot of things you can do to help the pollinators and everything in your neck of the woods. It's just a great day to, even a week, just to take out and be like, what can I do to help? E-waste. E-waste is a big,
I was going to say, what we were talking about, electric cars and the lithium batteries and all kind of the scary things. We're talking about all the things that we throw out every single day. The big thing is reduce, reuse, recycle. But what does it actually mean? What are you doing with the waste? What is the state doing with the waste? You're trusting them that when you throw out these things, you're going to hopefully do the right thing, and they're going to do the right thing, but sometimes it might not happen.
Sometimes not always an option.
Exactly.
And I totally get that. And everybody should totally get that. And
it's the little things that you don't even think about. Batteries. How do you can't just throw out batteries in the trash. I mean, I've done it plenty of times.
They stay in the ground.
So I think, oh, sorry, I'm doing both according to someone. Yep, a lot of rain moving in past couple days too, but I have an interview tomorrow to talk about e-waste. It's from the state of Michigan, e-waste specialist I'm talking to. So going to deep dive into that a little bit of as we see the increase of EVs.
How many people out there, physically raise your hand, how many people out there have that box of cords from 1990 or 2000 that just sits in the corner? I have like several of them.
Yeah.
Old
Under
cell
my
phones.
bed. Yep.
Old cameras, old
things that your
parts.
dad would always say, hey, don't throw that out.
Don't throw that out. I might need that.
Yeah.
But old cords, like all of that stuff is items that can't be broken down. You throw them in the ground, they're just going to sit there and possibly pollute the ground.
Exactly.
So there are e-waste, and yes, they do have days, especially like Earth Days, where you can go and take that in, and it's usually cost-free.
Right.
E-waste costs money to break down, much more so than normal recycling.
Exactly.
Boxes, glass, those things that a lot of communities have now implemented in your waste. So like I know in Cadillac, 10 years ago, they started doing recycling with Mrs. Green, I think it is. But the city said, hey, we're taking this seriously, put your boxes and stuff. Like, not everything that you would think is recyclable.
Right.
Like the plastic bags or certain green glass or something like that. There's certain things that you can't recycle. But for the most part, we're getting an option now where we can recycle, which is great. Great step forward. We're not all doing this 100% at the same time.
No.
But as long as we have the choices to get a little bit greener, a little bit better, that's a good step forward.
When it comes to spring cleaning, a lot of us
e-waste is still on that step of we're not there yet, but there's options. You do have to search them out, but there are options.
100%. And that's what we're gonna deep dive tomorrow when I interview. I can't remember his name right now. Sorry, sir.
Kevin?
But no.
Can't remember.
When I talk to him tomorrow, we'll talk about where you go, how accessible is it. What are other options maybe if you maybe can't afford it in your budget, or if you can just hold on to it for the time being, and what are other days. I know even back home Massachusetts, our junkyard in our town would have a couple days a year, like it would be like Labor Day weekend, Earth Day, and like Memorial Day weekend would be like your 3 times where like, if you're gonna clean out,
do it now.
Do it now.
And that's always a good thing to think of in the spring too, is
while you're spring cleaning, just get rid of that annoying box.
Yeah, getting rid of these. Like, I cannot tell you how much stupid electronic junk I have from late 90s that I've just kept around. It's like old wireless headsets that like have, it's just dumb. Yeah, I have so much crap that my wife's like, yeah, you need to take care of that. I will. Trust me, I'm a procrastinator when it comes to
it's just
stuff.
It's computer screens, it's everything.
Oh,
like,
it's everything. TVs.
What do you do with a TV? What do you do with the TV?
I mean, growing up, you just threw it in the trash.
Yeah.
Or you sat on the side of the corner.
Hope so.
And tomorrow at 10 a.m., we will have another topic of discussion. In fact, you can go to the Beyond the Forecast Facebook page right now and vote on which topic you want to talk about. On these free weeks, we give you 4 choices. You choose. Popular decision will be the topic that we talk about. So we'll talk about that tomorrow at 10 a.m. So for meteorologist John Gross, meteorologist Haley Fischetti, myself, I'm Chief Meteorologist Michael Stevens. Thank you for being here. We do appreciate it. And we'll see you right back here tomorrow at 4:30 to 5 o'clock for more Beyond the Forecast. Have a wonderful day, everybody.